Okay, so here's your zipper. Mine was originally 11 inches. So to prepare your zipper, make sure the amount of tape that you have here is 8 inches. So what I have done is sewn this end closed. Make sure your zipper pull is in between these stitch lines. But I went ahead and close this end, stitch this end, and then measured 8 inches, and then I stitched this in and I left this tape on. I've done that just because, just for error. Anything can happen when you're putting your tape in, your zipper in. And so if you have just a little bit extra to work with, if you messed up somewhere or something shifted, at least you can kind of fix that. So I did do some light stitches right across these both ends, and so that measures 8 inches. Go ahead and grab your zipper template piece. This will come in handy, and why I wanted to use this to create this, you'll see in the next step here as we're creating an optional zipper pocket. You will see why I created this. Just for me personally, it just makes that process just a little bit easier. So I will take you over to the table and show you how to place your zipper. Okay, so what you see here is me folding the interior lining piece and making a crease. You can most certainly iron this section, but I just made a crease there. At least it's a line that you can see. And then take your zipper pocket piece, flip your lining piece over right side facing up, and then you are going to, again, I'm just making sure it's even. I didn't see my crease line too good, so I went back in here just to make sure that I can see it really good. But again, you can iron it if you need to. Go ahead and lay it right side up, and then take your zipper pocket piece right side down. Again, make sure that you have put a crease into that lining, and make sure that you can see that line, because that is very important. We want to make sure that these two pieces are lined up center-wise. And then you want to go ahead and lay your zipper pocket piece 3.5 inches up from the bottom. And I'm just using my ruler here just to make sure I get that mark right. 3.5 inches up from the bottom on that center line. You want to, in that center area, you want to make sure that your pocket is centered properly. And then use your marking tool to mark the center. You probably will be barely able to see that, but I did mark it. And place your pocket piece again right side to right side. And then move your pocket down. You will notice a little overhang at the top, so that is correct. You should see that. And then you want to measure, and mine shifted here just a little bit. If your shift, just make sure that you kind of make sure everything is in place again. We will be pinning this shortly, but just make sure everything is in place. Now measure up 6 inches on that center mark, and you will see here where my template comes in handy. And this is why I do templates when I need to put in a zipper pocket. It just makes life so much easier. And again, I had mentioned earlier, you do not have to widen your template at all. The pattern calls for 3/8 of an inch, 8 inches long, that you are supposed to put on the fabric. But this template, you will see I folded it in half. I'm placing it on that center line mark, and all I'm going to do is use my pen and just trace all the way around here. and try as much as you can to keep it steady. A tip is instead of using paper, here you saw me use paper to cut out my template. You can use something much thicker like cardstock. Create a zipper template using placemats. I've seen that done from the Dollar Tree. You can pick something like that up. But I just used plain paper. And there you have it. You have your box there. I'm going to go ahead and pin everything in place. Once you have everything pinned in place, then go ahead and grab your ruler, because then you're going to measure halfway through the box and draw yourself a line down the middle. Make sure it's nice and even. And you can measure, but I just kind of freehand from the one angle, draw a diagonal to that corner of the box, because obviously you are going to be cutting in both directions. So I just eyeballed it. You can measure if you like. So I am about to stitch this, but this is why I have a template, because I find it's just much easier to have a template. Lay that down, do your marking around it so it's easy. Mark the center, mark your triangles at the end. To me, it's just a little bit easier than trying to mark it all out on the fabric. But you will now stitch through all of your layers. So you have your lining piece underneath, and this is your zipper pocket here. And so what we're going to do is stitch this box all the way around. Do be careful at the ends. If you have to shorten the stitch of your length, the length of your stitch, I should say, do that to make sure you have real nice corners here. And then we will cut from usually what I do is just use my seam ripper to open this section here, and then use my scissors, and then I'll cut all the way down to that point, and then cut to the corner, but not through the stitching, both ends. And then we'll be able to push our pocket through. So let's go ahead and sew our box. Okay, like I said, I usually just take my seam ripper here, and I in the middle somewhere, I just poke a hole there, make sure it's stable, and rip just a little bit, just a little, enough for me to get my scissors in. And I don't have small baby scissors. I do need them. If you have them, I would suggest using them. So I will use my snips to do the edges into the triangle, but I will use my scissors to cut all the way to the point of the triangle. Okay, so I went ahead and cut this open all the way down to the end. Let me just try to poke this here so you can see. So as you can tell, I cut that triangle all the way to the stitch, but not through it. Hopefully you can see that. And now the fun part is we get to turn all of this through to the other side. So remember, we were on the right side of the fabric. These were right sides together. Now we're going to go ahead and push this through. Okay, so once you have pushed this through, you will want to give this a good steam press. Get this nice and steamed. Let me see. Once you get your everything nice and steamed, you'll be able to see how the pockets, the corners and everything lay really nice, because then we're gonna that's when we decide to attach our zipper in here, and I will show you that you do have the option of using double-sided tape. You can use glue. I will show you what I will be using just to kind of keep this in place, to stitch all the way around, stitch the zipper in place. I will show you that after I have given this a good press. Okay, so I have given mine a good press here, and I haven't attached it yet, but I've laid my zipper underneath. You may find, because we did cut this piece just a little bit wider, that it seemed like your zipper tape won't fit because this is a regular dress size zipper. It will. It's just really going to be right there on the edge. I can feel underneath here the width of my zipper, and I know once I sew close to that edge all the way around, it will catch the zipper. Again, that's just my personal preference. You most certainly can make the width of your zipper tape template just 3/8 inch instead of the 1/2 inch for this opening, but this is what I prefer to do. And so how I am going to attach this to the back, again, the instructions say you can use a glue, or obviously you can use other kind of tape. I am going to use Wonder Tape to secure this in place all the way around, and then I will show you what that looks like as I secure that to the back. And then I will switch out my foot on my machine to a zipper foot, so I can easily go all the way around here with no problems. Okay, so what I have done is put my Wonder Tape here on the actual pocket piece. So this part is the part that is flipped inward, and now you're looking at the right sides of the zipper pocket, and you're gonna lay your zipper, center it, and yes, you will have a little bit of, because the tape is only 1/4 inch wide, but then go ahead and center the 8 inches across. Then you're gonna flip it over. That'll be nice and stuck down for you. Flip over and then stitch all the way around. Okay, so what you see here is that I've switched out to my zipper foot. Everything is taped down with the Wonder Tape, and as you can see here, this is why I always make my zipper a little longer, and I can just unpick the stitches across, which I will. No big deal. That is always why I make my zipper tape just a little bit longer. So what you're going to do is, I would suggest starting a couple inches from the end. Don't start at the end when you're doing your stitching. What you're going to do now is stitch all the way around. You can use a top stitch, or you can use a regular stitch. I will be using a 2.5 stitch length, and go all the way around the entire box. That will secure your zip in place, and then we will close up the zipper pocket. Okay, our zipper is now in, and so now you can go ahead and stitch close the zipper, and then you will have a pocket. Go ahead, flip your bag over, bring the top piece down, get all your loose threads and different things out of there, but go ahead and flip your top piece down like this, right sides together, and unless otherwise mentioned, now you will begin stitching at that 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, and then we will move on to the slip pocket. You will sew all 3 sides. So just to reiterate, go ahead and pin all 3 sides. You will be sewing it. Now do be careful as you're sewing this. If you had extra zipper tape, make sure you've cut that off. You don't obviously need that anymore on both ends if you had your zipper tape just a little bit longer than 8 inches, but you're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance and sew all 4 corners all three corners, I should say, three sides. Make sure that you are not catching your lining piece. It's just this pocket piece only, all the way around, and I will show you what that looks like. Okay, you now have your slip pocket piece. Remember, it is 12 inches across this way and 14 inches down this way. Go ahead and fold it right sides together in half. And you can pretty much finger press this. You don't have to use an iron. Go ahead and fold it in half. Make sure all of your ends are even. Fold in half. And what you're going to do, and once you fold it in half, you should have 12 by 7. Then what you're going to do is stitch around all three sides, leaving a 5-inch gap down here, because then this here will be used for turning right sides out. And so take this over to your machine, stitch all three ends here, all three sides, till you leave a 5-inch gap here. Then you want to go ahead and clip the corners, turn it right sides out, press it really good, and then we're going to top stitch along that 12-inch edge that doesn't have the gap. And if you need to, by all means, what I've done, this is a 6-inch actually ruler, and what I've done is place it at the bottom where I need to leave my gap, and I'm going to just mark these ends where I know to stop and start my stitching. And then so I will sew from this end all the way around, start and stop here, pick back up, start and stop all the way around here. So you can use something like that if you want to just guesstimate how much of a gap. Mine will be a little bit larger, but that is no big deal. You just want to make sure you have that gap bottom, so you'll be able to turn this inside out. So you have stitched all the way around, you have clipped your ends. I have trimmed down here and left the part that's a gap a little bit of a lip, so it's easier to kind of turn in on both sides. But now we're going to turn this right side out, give it a good press, and then we're going to come back and top stitch across the top. Very easy to do. Make sure here you take time to poke out your corners as well. Use a chopstick, a pointing tool. I have different pointing tools right now. I'm just using, this is the machine cleaner, that nice little point. That is what I am using. Okay, mine is all turned right side out. Corners are pointed out, and I am going to give this a really good press. And then from the top, the part that doesn't have the gap, you are going to stitch, do a top stitch, so about that 3mm edge, and then that will go all the way across the top here, and that will be the top edge of your pocket. Okay, so what I have done is top stitch. This is about a 1/4 of an inch in, and what I've done was just top stitch using a 3mm top stitch length all the way across the top. This will be the top of our pocket. Okay, now grab your other lining piece, fold it in half so you have your center mark like we did the other lining piece. Fold your pocket in half so you have your center piece. Mark 4 inches. Hopefully you can see this. What I've used is this disappearing ink, so hopefully you can see it is right there. And so what you want to do is this little lip part, go ahead and fold that in. You can iron it in place too, but go ahead and fold that in, And what you're going to do at that 4-inch mark that we just marked, make sure your center lines that you have here, those center creases, match up on that line. And what you're going to do is sew around the sides here, again making sure everything is nice and centered. What you're going to do is sew, let me just show you, sew all the way around, and this is how you will close this gap at the bottom, and then sew all the way around. And then what you're going to do is sew a stitch down the middle here, and this will give you 2 pockets. Now optionally, as the instructions do have, for a pin pocket you can sew 1.25 inches from one side for a pin pocket. So go in 1.25 inches, go ahead and sew that in. Or you can, if you want, you can go ahead and measure here across the center and leave the center piece for a pin, or put it on this side. Whatever, if you want that pin holder, you can put it wherever you like. What I am going to do is just stitch all around these 3 sides, and then stitch down the middle, and then we will have our slip pocket. I will show you what it looks like when I am done. Okay, our slip pocket is complete. These would, from the sides, it's about roughly 2.5 inches, but you really just want to make sure it's centered. And so here are my slip pockets. I did not do the pin holder as I just stated. And so this is now complete with putting our snaps into place. What you want to do is take either one of your lining pieces, and across the top here, so that's the straight edge, you will measure down 1.5 inches. If you can tell, I have marked my area here. At that mark on the back, go ahead and add some stabilizer here. This is Decaville Heavy. This is actually from Joann Fabrics. I had some scraps, so I went ahead and put that behind, and so that is right at that mark down below here. And what you want to do is use your washer, place your washer over the center mark, because you have, remember, you had that crease here that told you where the center was, and you want to place your washer. Hard to look through the viewfinder here but place your washer in the center, and then use a marking pen, or you can go ahead and just cut right into it, but use a marking pen to mark where your slits will go, and then cut into this. Now what I am using to cut, there are so many different tools. A lot of people just use their seam ripper, others use their nips. I have here this seam ripper that I tend to use when I need to cut into something really sharp, because it has a really sharp edge. And then go ahead and cut into that, and what you will do is put one of your prong pieces, it doesn't matter if it's the male or female end, and then you're going to put that through. This part will be on the wrong side of the fabric, and then you will close out your prongs. I will show you what that looks like once I have put this through. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like, and you're going to do this to both your lining pieces. So I have, my snap is in. This is how it looks from the back. The extra stabilizer there just to kind of keep this area nice and stable. Now we are going to sew the lining darts and constructing the lining of our interior bag. Okay, I may have forgot to mention this, so if this is a repeat, forgive me. But on the wrong side of your lining pieces, your pattern piece actually called for you to cut out. I'm not using fleece, but it did call for you to cut out the dart piece here. And so I did cut that out, and all I did was lay the piece over my lining fabric on the wrong side and just drew the dart lines in there. And so that's what you see on all 2 pieces of my lining. What you want to do now is stitch the dart close. All you're doing is, for stitching your dart close, these 2 legs of the dart, you want to meet those together and pin, and I'll just show you here shortly. And what you're going to do is stitch from here, starting at this end, inward, and You can backstitch if you want. Usually for darts and garments, if you're garment sewing, you do not backstitch at the end. You just run a long tail and then you form a knot. For bags, and this is the lining, no one will see it, I say go ahead and backstitch it. It really doesn't matter for the inside, but that's your personal preference. That is just what I am doing. So I'm going to bring these dart legs together, pin it, and then show you what it looks like. Okay, as you can see here, I have stitched my dart closed, and then what you want to do is you're going to repeat this for all 3 darts, and then you have the option of either cutting this and pressing your seams open if you want to. That's just reducing a little bit of bulk, or, and again, keep in mind the type of fabric that you are using, or you can just open it all the way up and just press it to one side, and that's exactly what I am going to do. So I am going to close my dart up on all the rest of the 3 ends, then I'm going to press them over, and then I will be right back to show you what that looks like before we do the outer side of our bag. Okay, looking a little crumbly here, but go ahead now and clip into your curves. If you have pinking shears, it's just nice to have some pinking shears to be able to do that, but go ahead and clip into the curve. Just make sure you don't go too far into the where the stitching line would be, and remember it's a 1/2 inch, so you really just want to make little short clips around this edge here and then around this edge here for both pieces. And then as we move on to our outer, you would have done the same thing. You would have marked your dart legs on both outer pieces, and as you can see, I had marked my centers on here, but you have your dart legs marked here, and you want to go ahead and match up your darts as we did in the previous step and close these out, and then we will be able to move on to the next step. So when we're doing our exterior, if you're using the faux leather like I am, you do want to start and stop at the start, but then when you do get to the end, you just want to leave a long tail. Don't backstitch at the end here, because now this is the exterior and you don't want that to be pointy. So start and stop at the start, backstitch at the start, and then when you get down to the bottom, don't backstitch, just end your stitching at the point of the dart and then leave a long tail, and then you will tie it off, and I will show you that once I have completed my stitching. Okay, so I have started and stopped at the end, at the top, at the bottom, and then here is the end where I just went off the edge. You see I didn't backstitch there, and what I'm just going to do, and this is kind of to prevent this from poking out, because this is the interior, I'm just going to tie a knot here on the end just to secure that dart, and then clip that, and then when you look at the inside of the dart, when this gets poked out, once it's all sewn, whoops, once it's all sewn together, you will see that then you won't have, you know, too much of a point there by doing that. So I'm going to do this to the other 3 parts, and the other 3 darts, and I will be back. Okay, you have gotten all of your darts into your outer fabric. What you want to do now, we're going to pin this and stitch this all together. Now if you are using faux leather like I am, we're going to do something that's usually called in garment sewing nesting. So we have the 2 darts here. You want to get those stitch lines together, fold one dart this way, fold the other dart this way. That way when you are sewing this, that those lines, those stitch lines will meet up, or hopefully meet up. If they do not match perfectly, do not worry about it, no big deal. But you do want to try to get the stitch lines again matching up perfectly. Fold one half of the dart this way, the other dart this way, and stitch all the way around. What you want to do is, let me let this focus, you are going to go ahead and clip starting from the top all the way down the curved edges, all the way back up to the top, and then you are going to stitch all 3 sides together. Then you will go ahead and clip into the curve. If you have, depending on the type of fabric you use, you might want to use pinking shears to clip into the curve. And then once we are done with that, you will have your outer piece done. But once I have mine all clipped together and stitched, I will show you what that looks like. Oh, and I do want to mention, make sure that you have also stitched together your lining fabric. I was talking about the outer fabric, but your lining fabric also needs to be put together, right sides together, and stitch 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. Leave a 6-inch gap here. This is where we'll be turning the bag through. So you'll leave that gap and you'll have that start and stop here. And then continue all the way around, if I did not mention that, because we are getting close to the end. I am loving the way this is coming together, but I just wanted to make sure after you did your snaps and all of that, go ahead and stitch. If you didn't already, go ahead and make sure that this is stitched, but leave a 6-inch gap down here at the bottom for turning the bag out. Okay, so I have sewn all the way around, 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the bag. I did not record that part only because I wanted to be careful right around here because it gets thick, and I wanted to make sure I was not going too fast around this curve area. So again, you do want to clip into the curve on both sides. And then now we're going to move to attaching the side tabs.